is
Yeah.
definitely a follow-up story for us. We've been talking about this one since the very beginning, and just like the sits where we didn't buy into the massive hysteria about this being an insurrection and a coup right away on this one, Will, we said, you know what, this stinks of a government entrapment plot, and boy do
Yep.
the facts keep coming out pointing us more and more in the right direction. So what's happening here?
Yeah. So I don't think there's a whole lot to this story, but it is, I think, a very important update in this whole Michigan governor kidnapping case. I think the last time we talked about it, we got into how this plot was very heavily infiltrated by FBI agents and confidential informants. There was at least 12 of them in total in this plot. And some of these guys, these informants, were playing very important roles in the plot. They were helping to organize meetings. They were transporting people. They were coming up with or encouraging some of the more wacky ideas, like getting explosives to blow up a bridge. The undercovers were pushing a lot of that stuff. And we
Can I
also,
just add too, because I think this is important. They were paying for people's travel expenses to some of these meetings, and also like paying to repair people's cars and food and stuff like that. And so, your buddy calls you and says, "Hey, dude, like if you want to come out of town and hang out and shoot guns with us this weekend, I'll pay for your hotel room and food and travel." That sounds a whole lot different than, "Hey, Will, why don't you come because we're gonna plot to do this crazy thing."
right. It's very different kind of vibe there. But that is, yeah, what a lot of these undercovers were doing, kind of helping to like recruit and organize people into this thing. And we did, I think, also the last time we talked about this, we mentioned this informant who's been identified only as Dan by the FBI. I think sometimes they call him the Iraq War veteran, or that's what the like BuzzFeed's reporting had referred to him as. But this guy ended up becoming basically like the number two in the group of alleged kidnapping plotters. In their, I think they called themselves the Wolverine Watchmen, their stupid little militia group. And this guy, this Dan guy, has been paid tens of thousands of dollars by the FBI. We went over all the different payments he's been given, and I think they bought him a car. And this Dan guy was definitely the main informant in all this group, in this kidnapping plot. And he did all kinds of stuff to actually advance the plot, including helping to recruit people and all that. However, we now have these text messages between Dan and one of the FBI agents that was handling him, and it came out in court recently. One of the defense attorneys for one of these alleged kidnappers demanded that they hand over all of the communications with the undercovers. And apparently Dan had told the agent that somebody in the group suspected him of being an informant, and that he said, but some other guy had vouched for him. And so the FBI agent, this guy Henrik Impola, tells Dan, quote, the best thing to do is to deny and accuse somebody else, like Trent. And that's referring to another person in the group who actually I don't believe was really involved. I don't think he was actually charged for anything in this. But the FBI agent then also reminds Dan to delete the text messages, which I guess he never did because we are now seeing them now. Or I'm
So
not
wait,
sure.
Will, I think
Okay.
that's really important and really disturbing, right? So this guy is trying to get these guys to do all this crazy stuff, right? Kidnap the governor of Michigan, and somebody says, "Hey, man, this sounds like something a Fed would tell us to do," and rather than maybe be like just like disappear from the group or something like that, and or like shut up and like add less provocative or something like that, he turns it on somebody who's actually not as involved in the plot, maybe less for it. That's got to really alter the group dynamics too, right? So now, not only are you encouraging people to do a violent act, the people who are less involved or possibly against it, you're exiling them. You're like pushing them out of the group. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And so, like, now the defense attorney that had gotten these documents, he's saying this discredits the FBI's investigation. That, like, there's documented proof now that not only did they direct one of their informants to, like, destroy evidence of, possible wrongdoing in this whole plot, but also to try to accuse basically some random guy of being a government agent. And, like, the defense attorney had mentioned that, like, some of the guys in this group were a little bit unhinged and may have tried to retaliate violently against this dude if they thought he was working for the feds. And so the FBI is just freely telling the guy just to, like, yeah, put this guy in danger by giving the perception that, he's a government informant. And so, this is, I think, a pretty big deal. It does kind of just show you, like, the tenor of, how the FBI did this investigation and did this sting. I'm not sure the text on its own is going to be enough for an entrapment defense, but definitely I think it is another step in that direction. Like, the technical legal standards aside, there's all kinds of shady stuff happening in this plot. Like, without the FBI agents and the informants sort of poking and prodding this thing along, it's not so obvious to me that this anything would have happened here. Like a lot of the guys who were caught up in this kind of strike me as goofballs. Like they like to dress up in their gear and go role play and do their training in a field somewhere, but they weren't maybe serious militants, short of being, prodded and encouraged by these government informants. But that's pretty much all I have here. That there is this one text in particular that really kind of shows how the FBI operated throughout this case.
Right. And well, unfortunately, I'm worried that these guys are going to get steamrolled, or they're going to, get them to start to turn over and just, bust one guy. I think who they say, Mr. Fotz is the guy who's like the one I think they're trying to pin everything on. And so maybe they'll get everybody else to just roll over and pin on him. But, the reason that me and you knew that, not knew, but suspected that this was the case from the very start. I mean, as soon as this was reported, me and you, the first conversation we had about this was suspect an FBI entrapment. And it wasn't because me and Will are like, oh, there's no such thing as a white supremacist ever, and it's impossible for anybody to ever want to do anything if they're white or anything. You know why that's what the liberals want to make it out as. But no, it's because we have seen so many cases of the FBI for the past 20 years entrapping almost exclusively young Muslim men into carrying out terror plots that they have no interest in actually carrying out, and they basically just manipulate them, just level under so many levels of this kind of stuff too, that they manipulate people. They basically introduce somebody to like a mentor figure, and then that mentor eventually tries to get them to carry out a terrorist attack. And the mentor all along was planning this and getting paid for it. And so the FBI is paying people to manipulate other people's lives and get them to do something that they would never otherwise do. One of the great cases of this is the Liberty City 7, and there's a new documentary out on that particular case that I suggest people go to look at. And then whenever you see one of these things, FBI accuses, unfoils this plot that they're accusing of, the first thing you should think is that this was probably some kind of entrapment scam where they use multiple levels of social manipulation to get people to half-heartedly commit to, one day commit a violent act, and then turn that into a terrorism case and take years of their lives away. And I mean that it really like the levels they use. They'll show pictures, especially if they're trying to radicalize somebody who's Muslim. They'll show people like videos of children who were killed by U.S. drone strikes and say like, oh, won't you like this? And then if that's not enough, maybe they'll have a young, attractive, maybe it's just like some FBI agent who's a dude, or maybe it's actually a female FBI agent, try to use like the sexual thing. You know how many dumb things young men will do for a pretty girl? That's just and no girl would do this unless she's paid by the FBI, right? And then
they call it
mentors and imams, they use all these kind of things to trap these people. There's one guy, I think is either his first or his last name is Hamed Hyatt, I believe, and he's one of these guys who didn't even have the money to buy the things the FBI wanted him to buy to make a bomb, and they had to lend it to him. This guy had no interest in actually carrying out a terrorist attack. He just wanted some friends, and the only people he could get to hang out with him were the informants and FBI agents who were trying to trap him into blowing something up. He just wanted to hang out with some guys. This is the story time and time again.
Right. Some new guy comes into their life. He's their new best friend. He's really cool. He seems to be just very friendly with them. And then sooner or later, as Scott Horton jokes, he's, say you love Osama, kid, trying to get him to say he wants to, train to be a terrorist or something. And it seems like they've successfully entrapped quite a few people. And a lot of times it's either a young kid. I think there have been some cases where there were legit mental, autism or something on the spectrum there where the kid was very easy to manipulate. Or sometimes it is just socially awkward. There's no actual disorder or anything, but someone who's very kind of vulnerable to manipulation like this. And yeah, they do this time and again.